Welcome to Ask Lincoln. All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Today we are diving into one of the hottest and, frankly, one of the most absurd political battlefields of 2025: immigration and border security. It's got everything: walls, apps, memes, deportation quotas, and even 18th century laws making a comeback. And of course, to help me break it all down, we've got our resident time-traveling historian slash Twitter commentator, Honest Abe Lincoln. Abe, welcome back.
Always a pleasure. Though I must say, if I had known 2025 would involve people debating whether babies born on American soil are citizens, I might have rewritten a few amendments back in my day.
We're going to get to that one. Don't you worry. But let's start with the headlines. The Trump 2025 crew claims the border is now under total control. They're talking about record deportations, almost no new asylum seekers getting through, and even a shiny new CBP app that lets people self-deport. Abe, help me out here. Is this real border control or just the political version of a press release?
Well, I'd say it's a bit like announcing you drained the Mississippi because you caught a few fish. Yes, border encounters have dropped sharply, partly due to tougher policies, but also thanks to Mexico doing a lot of the heavy lifting. The numbers sound impressive until you look at the mechanics. A lot of would-be migrants are simply stuck on the other side now, waiting, rerouting, or going underground. Control? Somewhat. Permanent solution? Not even close.
Right. And there's that whole CBP Home app situation. Essentially, it's a way for undocumented folks to schedule their own exit. On paper, it sounds efficient, but on social media, people are roasting it like it's Uber for deportation. Abe, do you see this as dystopian? Or are we just getting too clever for our own good?
It's peak 2025. We've managed to take one of the most emotionally charged policy debates in the country and turn it into an app with push notifications. Imagine telling someone in 1865, hey, don't worry about the army. We'll just give you a QR code. There's some practical logic behind streamlining voluntary departures, but the optics, the vibe, it's cold. Border security by way of Silicon Valley is bound to feel dystopian to a lot of people.
Now, let's zoom out. Trump's camp is promising what they call the largest mass deportation operation in American history. Millions, they say. But this isn't the first time we've heard that. You actually dealt with some of this thinking during the 19th century: nativist waves, Irish immigrants, Chinese exclusion acts. Does this feel like new territory or the same old cycle?
Same playbook, new characters. In my time, they said the Irish would ruin the Republic. Later, it was the Chinese. Now it's Latin Americans or asylum seekers from all over. The fear is always framed as economic collapse or cultural dilution. But over and over, history shows immigrant communities adapt, contribute, and redefine the very identity people claim they're threatening. If anything, I'd say America's superpower has always been its ability to absorb waves of change.
That brings us to this cultural identity fight. You've got one side saying immigration is the backbone of American growth, the other warning about losing what makes America American. How do you think we should approach that debate?
Honestly, it comes down to whether we view identity as fixed or evolving. If we cling to some mythical golden version of America, everything will feel like an invasion. But if we see identity as a river, constantly fed by new streams, it becomes a story of expansion, not erosion. I governed during a time when that identity crisis nearly tore us apart. We cannot fear diversity. What we should fear is losing our shared commitment to justice, liberty, and opportunity. That's the real foundation.
Now, let's hit a big one: the 14th Amendment. Trump's executive order claims birthright citizenship may not apply to children born here to undocumented parents. Abe, you literally signed off on that amendment's principles. What's your take?
I did not fight a civil war in C-600. Cell 00 men die so that we could split hairs on who was American based on their parents' paperwork. The 14th Amendment was crystal clear. Born here, you're a citizen. Full stop. Reinterpreting that now feels less like constitutional debate and more like political theater aimed at stoking division.
And speaking of theater, both sides are playing the economic card. Some argue undocumented immigrants strain public services. Others say they fill jobs Americans won't take and drive long-term growth. Where would you land?
Look, I swung an axe and split rails for a living. I know what hard labor looks like. The simple fact is, many industries depend on immigrant labor agriculture, construction services. If we suddenly remove millions, prices rise, shortages appear, and entire sectors buckle. There's a valid debate on legal pathways and border rules. But the idea that mass deportation would magically solve economic struggles is wishful thinking at best.
It feels like so much of this debate lives in a space between real policy and viral memes. You log on to Twitter, and it's just one side calling the other fascist, and the other screaming open borders. How would you cut through all that noise today?
I'd start with the same rule I followed in 1863. Appeal to our better angels. The louder the extremes shout, the more reasonable voices must speak plainly. Facts, empathy, law, those are the tools. Twitter may not reward nuance, but governance demands it. And frankly, if we could survive 1861, I think we can survive a few bad hashtags.
Amen to that. Abe, always a pleasure. Any final words for the folks scrolling through immigration debates on their phones tonight?
Only this: the Union was never perfect. It was always striving. Keep striving, and maybe put the phone down once in a while.
Wise as always. That's it for today's episode. Folks, like, comment, subscribe, and as always, let's try to have smarter conversations. See you next time.
That's it for now. Got more questions? Subscribe and ask me live. I'll answer right in the stream. I'm Abraham Lincoln. See you next time.